next part of the next project. First thing we'll do is take this hood off so that we can get this hood to mic, get rid of this dent right here. And then we'll get underneath, jack it up, get underneath, and start taking off exhaust, then motor mounts and wiring, and take off the air cleaner and get us a way to connect the engine hoist to it, and just go from there, get it drained. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to start with is I'm going to mark these hinges on the hood, the exact spot with a little pin right here on the edges, to make sure that when we put the hood back on, we have the gaps the same as they are now, because I mean the gaps are perfect on this car. So then I'm going to start draining the radiator, get it empty and get it removed, and then we'll jack the car up and start removing some other stuff. So hopefully Josh is here to help me get the hood off. Okay, I've about got everything done up here that I can do without getting underneath. So I'm going to jack up the car, get under there, drain the oil, get that oil filter out of the way so it'll miss that wheel well, or that shock tower right there as I come up the motor, and get underneath there and unhook the clutch pedal, the exhaust, get the transmission bracket off. Probably the emergency brake cables will be in the way. I probably can't do anything, take that transmission bracket off yet till I get the engine hoist here. But I guess I'll get it tomorrow, because I'm getting close to being able to pull this thing. Okay, so the next step on the 66 is to jack up the back end, get it off the ground high enough for me to get under there where I can actually see without stuff being right on my nose. Okay, so here I'm going to take the drive shaft off the back there, drop this down, the back down, and when I drop the back down, this tail housing here, this shaft out of the tail housing will pull straight out. I'll put a plug in there ordered from NPD that will keep the fluid from draining out when I drop this part down when I pull the engine. All this right here is the fingers that come down from the gear shift. I think I can just take this bolt here and this bolt here out and leave all these connected, and that will release that from the transmission, and then I'll have to, up here, I'll have to unhook those from the transmission, this linkage. And then we'll have to take this here, this cross member off. All this right here, which is the emergency brake stuff, will have to be removed so that can drop down. Exhaust have to be dropped down. The clutch pedal linkage, we have to take all this off. right here. That part right there, the clutch goes through. I take that, or from the clutch pedal to the actual clutch arm. I take that off, and hopefully after that, before we take this cross member off here, we'll take everything else off except for this. Then we'll also put a jack under it and get where we can jack it, let it down. Speedometer cable, we gotta unhook that from the transmission, and the backup lights, those electrical lines right in there. We gotta unhook that, and that should be it. So let's get started and see what we can do here. Alright, so here's where I am now. I've got the chains bolted to the front of the heads, so on the front of the head and the back, so that I can hook the hoist up to that. I'm in the process of getting this fuel line off, and I'm going to go ahead and take the carburetor off so that I can get the leveler down as low, close to the engine as I can, so I can get more headroom to lift with. I want it as close to it as I can get so I can lift high and not hit the ceiling. I've got everything underneath unhooked except for the little cross piece that holds the transmission up and the speedometer cable. So once I get those two off, give some lift onto the engine, so I'll go ahead and take the mounts, the motor mounts off on the bottom, and it should be starting to break free. So I got to put the engine lift together. I've just got a couple more things to do underneath. I got to disconnect the motor mounts on both sides, and then I've got a cross member that goes underneath the transmission I got to take off. So I've got a jack up underneath the transmission, getting the pressure off of it, and I'll get that cross member off of there and let that sit on the jack. And then I've got Josh coming over to help me later, and hopefully he can help me guide it out of here without tearing up any of the radiator support or scratching any paint or anything like that. So we'll see how this goes. There it is. There's the little beast out of the car. I don't think I tore anything up. I don't think I scratched any paint. There it is, empty bay. So now comes the fun part of getting everything cleaned up and ready for paint. That little area right on the bottom of that frame rail, right in there. At one point someone had a different bell housing, a big iron bell housing, and totally different kind of clutch, the wrong one. When I got the car, I replaced it all with the stock stuff. And so they cut a big hole in the side of that frame for the spring to bring the clutch back up. So I've got to cut that out and re-weld it, patch that. Everything else is just mainly cleaning and sanding and painting. And I've got a big fat mess all over the floor. There's the transmission and the bell housing that I've already had out and replaced by themselves. I've never had the motor out, but bell housing I got from a original Mustang, and cleaned it all up and replaced that. So that's the big mess that's got to be cleaned and painted. But pretty amazing that this is the original engine for this GT. Thing I forgot to mention, see all this oil and cat litter I put down and try to soak it up? Well, when you read all the stuff about pulling these motors, they always tell you to plug the end of the tail shaft. That's what that is that plastic plug that keeps it from leaking out the end. What they don't tell you is that when you unhook the speedometer cable from that hole right there, then it leaks all over the place when you pull it out. So you need a little stopper or a cork or something to go in that hole also when you're pulling it. So anybody that's going to do that, remember that. Well, the goal now that we have the engine out is to start the cleaning process. So what we need to do is take that starter off, anything that's blocking that old blue paint. I don't know how well it shows up, but there's this light blue from the valve covers on down. It's the incorrect color blue, so sometime in the last 50 years somebody has had this motor out and repainted it the wrong color blue so that the top part is the right color. So I've got to degrease and just get all that gunk and goo and stuff, old paint, all that scraped off of there. So to do that, I'll have to remove the starter. I'll end up having to take the oil pan off, probably manifolds on both sides. I think I'll just try to do everything on the motor first, get it done before I even start on the engine bay. Got quite a bit of degreasing done, most of that oily greasy junk off the front, and got the harmonic balancer and the front pulley off, fuel pump goes over on that side, starter, and uncovered the all-important engine code number, which I'd seen when I put the transmission on a while back. There it is. So now I go on and I think I'm going to go ahead and take the oil pan off, and then I'll get it off of those motor mounts off the manifolds. I'm going to put it down on some blocks on that flat part where the oil pan goes, and then get the manifolds off. So now starts the non-fun part of any restoration or any job, and that's getting all the old paint off. So I've got the oil pan off, and I'll probably use it get it off in the sandblaster, and any like brackets or pieces I've taken off that I can fit in there. But the block and the heads and all that's got that wrong paint on there. I've got to fire brush it or try to get it much down to bare metal as possible, so we have a nice smooth paint job. So I'll mark my spark plug wires and try to tape up that valve cover. I'll start on this side, and so I don't throw stuff on that good paint, and start trying to get it off with a wire brush. Well, I got Andy here with me this weekend, and still got the motor out of the 66, so we're going to try to double team it, and got 2 Dremels going, and we're going to try to get all the nooks and crannies of that old light blue color off the motor. First we're going to go ahead and get some paper to cover this other side so we don't get any flying chunks. We took the 66 out, so nothing came and hit the paint on it. The worst part of this thing is over here. I mean, it's just, there's some areas up in there it's going to be really hard to get. And we've got some new little things that go on our Dremel that's supposed to help reach up in there. So we're going to try to see how that does. And then also we might do some sandblasting in the cabinet for some brackets and some other stuff that we got over here on our little parts bench. Maybe the alternator bracket and the old smog bracket, the pulleys, the harmonic balancer, which is somewhere in here, and the oil pan. All that has to be blasted in the cabinet. So let's see what we can get done. So here's the paint just got in for the engine bay. I have to order this stuff special. I can't have a hard time finding it. It's a acrylic industrial paint. That's a color is semi-flat. So usually, you know, it's semi-gloss or whatever, but this is almost flat, but just a little bit more gloss on it than flat. And so that's kind of really close match to the color they used back in the old engine bays in the 60s. So that's what I usually have used almost in the past. So not many places you can find it.
All right, so 2 hours of Dad and I sitting here with Dremels and an air gun, sanding this thing down, and we're to here. So not even close to being done. Dad got a lot of the stuff on this front part sanded down to bare metal, but still got quite a ways to go before it's anywhere close to being ready for paint.
And always remember, don't retire it if you can rebuild it. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning in and watching this week's episode of Rebuild It. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any awesome content. Have a good one.